Hey, welcome back. Let's talk about re-entering the workforce for moms. A lot of women, of course, take a break mid-career to focus on family, and re-navigating the workforce can be tricky. Joining us now is psychologist and executive coach, Dr. Lisa Orbe-Austin. Hi, Dr. Lisa. Thanks so much for joining us this week. Always good to see you. I love this topic. What is a good way to think about transitioning back to work?
But I think when you're transitioning back to work, you really have to give yourself some compassion and kindness. That oftentimes we're most focused on the outcome, but it's so important to really appreciate the process and to remember that you are qualified, even if it's been a while since you've been in the workforce. Not many jobs change that much, even in a decade. And that to stay out of the shame spirals that kind of make us feel like, why didn't we do this while we were on break or that on break? And to really allow ourselves to have the time to do that transition.
I love that line. Not many jobs change in 10 years. I'm going to always remember that. What are some ways to get your resume ready and to start that process of networking?
I think just dust off the resume immediately. A lot of people are afraid to look at it. I really feel a lot of shame and kind of embarrassment, and just show it to someone immediately before you even touch it. Show it to somebody who's in the field, who's qualified, who's a hiring manager. Ask them for their feedback on what you should do. I think it's really important to remember that most hiring managers are not really that concerned about gaps. They're very familiar with them, and they don't really find them to be that much of a problem. But if you feel like there are gaps, remember, you're oftentimes sharing your expertise volunteer-wise. That could be considered consulting, even if it's in a volunteer setting, but to really allow yourself to not overthink the gap that much.
Okay. And we know moms gain a lot of common sense, problem-solving skills through child rearing. Are those skills transferable to the workforce?
They're absolutely transferable. I don't know if I would put them on my resume unless you are in like childcare or education, or you're a psychologist or a counselor. Make sure that they feel directly applicable to the role. But if they don't, it's okay to leave it off and to know that you've gained a ton of skills while you've been, out of the market.
What are some other tips to help an employer see past whatever biases they may have about long-term unemployment?
I think it's really important to recognize that this is really a real bias. It's called maternal wall bias. It's this experience when a lot of women go back to the workplace and people say things like, wouldn't you rather be home with your kids? And say things. And I think it's really important for employers to recognize that you shouldn't be doing anything for mothers they're not asking you to do for them. And then to recognize also that working mothers are more likely to sue for discrimination in the workplace, and that if they end up in federal court, they're 2/3 more likely to win. And so it's really important to recognize you have to train your managers. You have to help them to understand how to really accommodate and be inclusive to working mothers in the workplace, and not to engage in these biases actively.
All right, Dr. Lisa Orbe-Austin, thank you so much for your insight. As always, we really appreciate it. You can follow her on Instagram at Dr. Orbe-Austin, and we will see you next week.